Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. How are we doing? My name is Mike Nardelli, and I am the brand ambassador for Licor 43. I am so excited today because we are going to be talking all things coffee and Licor 43 and our Bartenders and Baristas 2021 challenge. I have two amazing people here with me today. I have Amanda Witt out of New York and Rose out of Los Angeles, California. And I guess I will turn it over to you, Amanda, to intro yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into becoming a barista.
Oh, of course. My name is Amanda Witt. I've actually been a barista since I was in high school. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and it was just the job that I loved lattes and coffee so much that the second I could figure out how to weasel my way into a job at a coffee shop, I did. And I was really lucky that I ended up working at coffee shops through college that were very much into more of the professional and quality end of things, which then led me on to a very strange and interesting journey in working in coffee all over the US and spending some time abroad as well. And then when I moved to New York, I also started bartending as well.
So cool.
Yeah.
And Rose, let's hear a little bit about you.
My name is Rose. I moved out to LA about 7 years ago from Florida. I really didn't know what I was doing, except I wanted to be in a city. And I got a host job at a cocktail bar and realized I liked learning about cocktails more than hosting. So I jumped into that. And yeah, I love bartending. I love creating my own drinks. And that kind of is what got me into competitions because it gives you kind of the inspiration to come up with these new drinks and showcase them to other people using the brands you love.
Amazing. Well, with that, I think we'll get started and just kind of give a quick overview for all of you that are on this education by first talking about Licor 43. Licor 43 is a Spanish liqueur. It is made with 43 natural secret ingredients. Of them, there are 5 known ingredients that we do know, and they are lemon, orange, coriander, vanilla, and tea. What kind of tea, we do not know, but it is delicious. It is a secret family recipe that only 3 people in the world know, and it pairs perfectly with coffee, which I am so excited about today because what we're going to be discussing is our annual Bartenders and Baristas competition. Anna Rose Crone actually won the competition last year, and Amanda is going to kind of walk through all the different ways you can make coffee. Some more information about Licor 43 is that our signature serve is the Carajillo. This is a shakeado variation. Oh, turning the camera the wrong way. But it's nice and frothy and delicious. If you look to the screen right now, you can see that you can also layer this cocktail, and it is delicious. There is a lot of versatility with Licor 43 and ways that it can be used, from old-fashioned variations to daiquiris to really, you could just have it as an affogato over some ice cream, and it is delicious. But ultimately, it pairs perfectly with coffee, and that's what we're here to discuss today. We are very excited to announce that registrations are now open for the Licor 43 Bartenders and Baristas 2021 challenge for the entire United States. There are 2 rounds with this competition. There is a local round that will happen in the USA, and it's open to all 50 states, to all professional baristas and bartenders. After that local round, a winner is selected. We will have the opportunity to face off against Estonia, Mexico, Holland, Spain, United Kingdom, Brazil, Germany, and European Bartenders School. And I am so excited because you can see here, this is Anna Rose Crone, who actually won the local round and then won the global round. So I'm really excited to talk to her at the end of this about her perspective and what it was like actually competing in this competition during the pandemic, and what it's been like after winning and getting to work with Licor 43. A little bit more information about the competition itself. It's really important when you register to look over our judging scorecard. It is divided into several parts, but I'll just kind of go through it real quickly. 20% of the vote Oh, I screwed up here. It is actually 80% of the local judging panel will be the idea behind the cocktail, drink name, Licor 43 influence, how easy the cocktail is to make and replicate, originality, presentation and delivery, taste and flavor, and of course, coffee knowledge, which Amanda, I think, is going to really give you guys a leg up during the competition. But as you can see, the link below is how you go to sign up. If you register, please list Portland Cocktail Week is how you've heard about the competition. And we are so excited to see these submissions. You have until midnight, June 24th, to submit your video. And all you have to do is tag at Licor43USA and Licor43BB2021 in the hashtags. A little bit more information about the competition. You can see here on this next slide, it's really just open to everyone. And we are really looking for the best of the best. I am going to actually be showing some of the best videos from last year's 2020 finalists. Actually, we'll get to see Anna Rose Crohn's, Taylor Lax, the Cocktail Bandit, and Jamie Clark at Spirited Jamie. All three of these contestants placed in the top 3, and all their videos were incredible and had the most engagement and likes on their actual videos. So I will be sharing those to my personal story after we get off this live to kind of go through it a little bit more. But with that, I think that's pretty much all I have about Licor 43 and Bartenders and Baristas. But what I am so excited is to actually walk through the different coffee preparations and the ways in which you can prepare your coffee with Amanda Witt. So I guess we will turn the stage over to Amanda. Oh.
Such a rookie move. I am so sorry. Hi, I'm
Oh,
Amanda. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing well. So we're going to talk a little bit about coffee preparation. Yeah, so do we start by pulling? Okay, great. Slide shows up. And if you give me just 2 seconds, I will grab the kettle to get one of the most important ingredients in coffee, the water. All right, so this is Coffee for Cocktails 101. This is kind of an extension of some teaching that I have done over the years about brewing coffee specifically for use in cocktails, but also kind of using some kind of bartender language to understand how coffee works, what it is, because coffee is really interesting in comparison to making a cocktail because technique is always important with cocktail, but with coffee, it is such a integral part to how the coffee ends up tasting. It's like, imagine if you stirred your martini wrong and not only was it over or under diluted, but it literally tasted different. Like this is kind of the sort of thing that we're looking at. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so what is coffee anyways? Coffee is the dried seed of a fruit. It is largely produced between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So this narrow belt around the equator where it is warm during the day, but also at high elevations where it can be cold at night. What we are drinking is the dried and roasted seed of this fruit. And the way that the coffee is dried is going to have a big influence, and also the way that the processing happens. So how the kind of fruit element is removed from the seed is going to have a huge influence on flavor. There are different regional styles for that. There are also now different styles that historically were unique to regions that have now become just kind of a stylistic and marketing point for different farmers. So yeah, I think that one important thing when you're looking at making a cocktail with coffee is to use as many coffees as possible to figure out what is kind of right for your cocktail and kind of play matchmaker in that way. Yeah, so got some coffee beans here. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen a coffee bean, but these ones are from a Brazilian farm, very straightforward. Something that's important to note is you can see on some of these there's still some paper attached to it, which is why it's this like light stuff that's called chaff. And that really absorbs flavors and smells really easily, which is why storage of coffee is really important. So making sure that you're, using like airtight containers, keeping it in a very temperature stable place, ideally not the freezer, just kind of to make sure that it's not absorbing the flavors kind of its environment, because it is a very absorbent bean. Next slide, please. All right. And then why listen to me? We kind of got into that in the intros. I've been teaching about making coffee for many years. I also was a Brewers Cup competitor. So I actually competed nationally doing this thing I'm going to show you now in my own living room, which is very exciting. I did that for 2 years, I believe, in 2012 and 2013. I competed on half of a company called Everyman Espresso here in New York. It was really exciting and a really cool challenge. I also coach through a nonprofit called Glitter Cat for the Coffee and Good Spirits competition, which is a coffee trade cocktail competition. Coffee is really different because brands don't run competitions for them. It's actually the trade bodies. So it'd be if like USBG ran ours, it's very different. But yeah, also on top of that, next slide, please. I love coffee so much. Like, I don't work as a barista right now, and I drink coffee like 3 times a day, which is kind of sad, but I just like drinking it and I like learning about it. It's really fun. All right, so next slide. So first thing we're going to want to do is talk about basic tools for brewing and making coffee. The first will be a scale. So the scale is kind of like, in bartending, we have a jigger. In coffee, we have a scale. Weights are going to be really important because a lot of what we talk about in coffee is ratios. So your ratio of ground coffee to water. And you can understand the adjustments you make to either how you're pouring your coffee, how the coffee is ground, by understanding that ratio in relation to the amount of time it takes to come out. So it's all about kind of building that connection and then understanding. And another thing that's going to really help with that is having as good of a grinder as you can find. Ideally a burr grinder, because you're going to get a much higher ratio of surface area between the coffee and the water. Great. And so this is my scale. It's the Hario scale. It's the nice part is it has the timer built in. But before I had one of these, I just used my phone calendar, my phone to time it, which is fine. Any timer will do, honestly. And, it's like, I think I might say in here, get a scale that goes to 0.5 gram, but if you're stealing one from pastry, just take the one they have. I'm sure it'll be fine. And one thing I love about this competition is it does ask you to represent the coffee recipes in grams. So that is extra encouragement to kind of do this, and it will ultimately make making coffee in general much easier because you can communicate, you can record these things and understand later. If someone moves around the knobs when you're not looking, your roommate, your coworker, no big deal. Can I get the next slide, please? All right, so what method to use? There's going to be pros and cons for every method. So the 4 that we have here are espresso, cold brew, AeroPress, and pour over. Espresso is great, it's concentrated, quick, and then you also, as seen in Mike's, I don't know if you use an espresso for your Carajillo, I assume so. But you get a little bit of that foamable crema, which is a textural and flavor component that is so enjoyable. The cons, though, is it's expensive equipment. Your access to practicing on it may or may not be as readily available, and learning how to pull a shot consistently on an espresso machine may have a learning curve if it's something you're not already doing every day. AeroPress, which looks like this, and we will be seeing shortly. It's a little less concentrated, but it's going to have a little bit more control. This guy is about $30, so pretty easy. This looks like something you're like, how does coffee come out of here? I'll be showing you, don't worry. And cons is just like purchasing new equipment. It's always kind of like, am I going to use this in the future? And that's something that only you can decide. Cold brew, great for the high concentration, great because it has a little bit of a shelf life. So it makes drinks very functional for use at the bar. And you can do it with little to no special equipment, which I'll be showing you as well. And the cons are extraction can be extremely difficult to control to a high degree. So if a really specific coffee or a really specific note in a coffee is what you want, this might not be the means to achieve it. And then the last one, which I will talk about here, which will be the first thing I will make for you, is a pour over. Pour overs are great because you have an extremely high degree of control. You're literally just pouring hot water over a filter, like so. Like if you have a Mr. Coffee, a Mr. Coffee is an electronic device that pumps hot water over a bed of grounds. So this is like a fancier version of that, significantly fancier. So I make coffee here. If I picked up the right one, it's going to be about 30 grams. The cons for it, though, is that it is a really low concentration. So you're going to be dealing in that case sometimes with having a drink where maybe it's not as coffee forward, or if you're using some other more powerful ingredients. One thing to mind with that is that you can always use less water because there is water that's going to be introduced by your ice. If you're doing a cold drink, by lower ABV spirits, those things are all going to help with that dilution. So, these ratios I'm giving you are for coffee that's like beautiful and like drinkable out of the gate, but like lowering those ratios in order to replace that water elsewhere is also totally easy. Next slide, please. All right, so pour over, the reason I like to start with it too is it really just describes how coffee brews and the real essence of brewing a coffee, which is very easy. First thing you're going to want to do, you've got your coffee, your filter, and your grinds, is you do what's called a bloom, which is where you pour about 40, 50 grams of water in. And then with this, you're just letting the gas in the bed of the coffee escape. Let me show you here. So if you see there's these bubbles, that's CO2 that was introduced during the roasting process, that because I am allowing it to escape now and not immediately starting to pour water on, I know that when I do pour water on, that CO2 has escaped and I can actually come in contact with the bean. So, it's like a difference between a high five with gas and air in between you and a hug. I want the water to hug the coffee bean. So keep going here. And if I wanted to do this as iced coffee, right now I'm pouring in 500 grams of water. If I wanted to do this as iced coffee, what I would do is put about 200 grams of ice here on the bottom, and then pour in about 250 grams of water. 500, 450. The reason I have less is because I know I'm going to add even more water to this coffee when I put this coffee over ice, and that ice melts. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
Great. So I have been talking a little too long, so I'll need to kind of hustle up with this. But what I'm going to want to do is finish pouring at about 2 minutes. And then this coffee will drain through and be done probably about 2 minutes, 45 seconds. And so this means that the contact time between the coffee grounds and the water is going to be about 2.5 minutes. The amount of time that the coffee and the water spend together is going to determine what the water takes from the coffee. There are some things that extract faster and some things that extract slower. So faster, you're going to get kind of those like compounds that reads as like acid, citrusy fruit. And then when it sits longer, you're going to get kind of those nutty flavor notes. But it's also kind of a like trade-off, right? Because along with those nutty flavor notes, the other thing you're going to get is some of the tannins. And if you imagine, like if you have a black tea bag and like every person in the world who's ever drank tea, you just leave it on your counter and you forget about it till it cools and that tea bag has been in there for like an hour, and then you taste it and it's just the total tannin bomb. That's the kind of thing that will happen with your coffee if it's exposed to the water for too long. All right. So got it in here, very easy. I'm using a gooseneck kettle just for the ease of the pour. A really like kind of cost-effective alternative if you don't have one of these or don't want to buy one of these is actually those like little metal kettles that they use at the Chinese restaurant. It also has a pretty good and controlled pour. I used one for a couple of years before I bought this guy. And this will be a beautiful cup of coffee. And so we're going to move on now to the AeroPress, because I feel like this one maybe looks a little more confusing, but there's a lot about this that's very similar to what we just did here. The AeroPress is made by the Arobi Corporation. It also involves a paper filter, and I'm also going to be pouring over grounds. But the difference is with this one is it's also what you would call an immersion method, where the water and the coffee are going to sit together before they are filtered through. This is going to allow the coffee to kind of gain some, richer flavor. It's going to be a little bit more of a denser, stronger cup of coffee. And also some coffees are really like a lot more amenable to this method. Like a lot of the lighter roasts and stuff, especially that are more popular in like Northern Europe these days or San Francisco, those are going to be really, like really going to shine in this method, I think. All right, so this guy finished draining a little late, but looks pretty beautiful. I will put it off to the side, go me, and then move on to AeroPress. AeroPress is also a pretty quick method. Did everybody see that I put the coffee grounds in here using this little funnel guy, right? Got that? So I got my coffee grounds in here, and I've got my water. And I am starting my timer. And I'm going to remove this guy and then just pour this. And I have 18 grams of coffee in here, and I'm going to do about 100 grams of water, because this I'm actually going to make iced. This is sitting right here. And then I'm adding my ice to my receptacle. It's going to be about another 100 grams. Ice cubes are never exact, but looking good. And you don't want to press this guy on the scale because it'll hurt it, but right now I'm just going to wait for a second for it to hit its minute and 30 seconds. I wrote a minute and 40, but honestly, these are the kind of things that you dial in for. When you dial in, you're going to adjust based on how your coffee's tasting. If you let it sit a little longer, if you let it sit for a shorter amount of time, if you stir it, if you don't stir it, these are all going to be factors that you would adjust. And I am adding the filter now. And this is important because we're doing the inverted method, is that sometimes when you want to pour this over, the heat and this little gas from the CO2, like we saw on the top of the pour over, is going to want to push these apart. So you're going to want to hold both sides. When I was doing it all the time, I could do it in two hands now, or do it in one hand. Now I'm going to do it in two. So flip, and we are going to press into the receptacle. And that's AeroPress. So this is another great option. Again, it's because of the concentration, it takes icing down really easily, which will really help. And then, all right, great. Next slide, please. All right, so cold brew. I see that we may have questions coming in so far. Let me know if that happens, if we want to hold any thoughts until then, or okay. Oh, Brennan, hi. So Brennan's asking how I feel about brewing more coffee with the AirPress using a bypass method. So the idea would be to make kind of a more concentrated batch in here and then add some hot water so that I can make a larger batch of coffee, I guess, if I wanted to serve multiple cups to people. I think that's great for a way to drink just coffee. I don't know if that's something I would do to brew coffee for any sort of cocktail, because you're already so much trying to fight getting that concentration really strung into the coffee to begin with. In general, I think bypass brewing, which is just adding more water to coffee because it's too concentrated, is totally a fine method. I have no big strength about it.
And then Amanda, we have a question as well. What is your favorite way to prepare coffee for yourself?
For myself, so I brew in the Kalita wave every day. I think it's just kind of, I like to sip. I'm a really slow coffee drinker, so I make a Kalita wave and I put it into a thermos, and then I drink in about like a 4-ounce cup, just kind of as I go. I think it's, it's lovely. I think the flavor is really balanced. Also, to be perfectly frank, any and all breakable coffee gear I have, I try not to use every day because I'm just a huge klutz.
I can relate.
Yeah. So the reason that my French press has lived so long, which is how I brew my cold brew, is because I barely ever use it. I got it for when there's like large groups coming over because it's a multi-cut method.
Nice.
Great. How are we doing on questions right now? We good?
Right. Yep. Right now, I think that's all we have.
All right. Yeah. So cold brew, which is our method number 3. It is a really good way to make coffee. It's a full immersion method. We talk about pour over coffee, brewed over. That's method number 1. Method number 2 is AeroPress. AeroPress is kind of a hybrid of a pour and an immersion. And then number 3, cold brew, is straight up an immersion method. So if I'm making if I'm making it in a French press, which I am not going to do right now because it's a lot of coffee to use for something that I genuinely will not drink, is I will take this guy, I will fill it with 1 part by weight coffee, ground coffee, which is going to be a little coarser ground. So think like diamond kosher salt, like a little bigger than that. And then I'm going to fill this with cool water. And I tend to use my refrigerator because my apartment is not very stable in temperature. And then just do it about 14 hours rather than the 12. So it just takes a little longer than it would if I was maybe brewing in a cafe and I was doing the bucket just like, in the back of house or whatever. I do tend to prefer to refrigerate cold brew once it is brewed. Some people think it's shelf stable. I genuinely do not agree. If you do and you've always been safe, more power to you, but you just put it in the fridge. So yeah, you can make cold brew basically with anything. Like I said, I use my French press. So, I would do this overnight and then in the morning, press it down. And then because I might want to use it for more than one day, I would pour it through a coffee filter to get rid of the rest of the fines, because that kind of gravelly, silty stuff that's going to make it through that metal filter is going to change the flavor of your coffee day to day. And if you're researching a cocktail or you want to produce a cocktail that is consistent every day, you would want coffee that is consistent every day. So make sure you're,
And now, Amanda, you said earlier that storage in the freezer is not the best place to store coffee beans, but
Yes.
in the fridge for temperature. And the reasoning behind that, is it just, because I know so many people do it that way and are probably doing it wrong, but just a little bit more information on that.
So when I said not in the freezer, I actually meant the physical beans.
Okay.
And then I was saying put the coffee in the refrigerator. I was talking about the finished brewed coffee. Unfortunately, we don't really have really good language between coffee bean and brewed coffee. That doesn't feel kind of redundant.
Yes.
But yeah, that's my opinion. And I think so the freezer is hard because if you are taking coffee and you're going to have a couple months before you can drink it, it's like some beans you got on vacation or something, by all means, put them in the freezer until you're ready to start drinking them. But what is actually pretty bad for coffee is when it's coming in and out of the freezer, because that temperature change means that it collects moisture. And then that moisture is going to affect and degrade the flavor of the coffee. Meanwhile, the coffee will also be taking on whatever flavors are in your freezer. And if you are a person who maybe, has that kind of freezer burny sort of situation, like then that starts to get in there and it's just like, it's not great. So yeah, if you're going to put coffee in the freezer, it's great, but it needs to go once in and once out. And yeah, so cold brew. Let's go to the next slide. I feel like we've cleared that up. If there's any questions with cold brew, yeah, I'm sorry I'm not doing a full demo on that. I just genuinely don't want to waste, coffee comes from so far away and it is grown and picked by human hands that do not make enough money. And the idea of making coffee I won't drink is always kind of difficult for me. But yeah, so espresso we're going to talk about. There are so many ways and so many different machines and technology for espresso that even if I had an espresso machine, giving a demo wouldn't be super productive. The different varieties of grinder based on where you live, what technology you have access to is going to be a really wide range. Same with espresso machines. But there's some really good foundational things that you can keep in mind. One is keeping the espresso machine clean. So, check out the manufacturer's instructions. And also if you are working with a roaster that has any engagement with your company at all, talk to them about what you guys should be doing, especially if you're at a restaurant. No offense to restaurants, but I've seen some really dirty espresso machines in restaurants. They'll be clean on the outside, but then you look at the group head, the area where the coffee actually comes out, and you're like, what? Wow. And this is also because this is really expensive technology and it's very sturdy as long as it's kept maintained. So it's great. And then the other thing for you as a barista or you as a person making coffee is, it's very simple, very similar to when you very first start making drinks, is that you really want to have simple and repeatable movements and understand why you're doing everything that you're doing. And, interrogate it if you want. There's a lot of things that they used to tell us when we were learning how to make espresso that just are not part of the education anymore. Next step, please. And again, start with a clean grinder. If you're grinding coffee fresh, use your scale. Even, believe it or not, on this little Hario scale, if you have a coffee portafilter, which is the large handle thing where you put the coffee in one end and you have the handle to take it in and out of the espresso machine, it'll fit on a scale. And you can weigh the amount of coffee you're putting in. And then you can also tear the scale and then weigh the amount of espresso that comes out. And doing this is really helpful because if you keep track of these numbers, then you're going to understand when your espresso is dialed in by knowing, okay, this is supposed to be, 18 grams of espresso at 20 seconds is supposed to give me 32 grams of liquid espresso. So 18 grams of coffee, 32 grams of espresso. And your first couple shots, you're getting 20 grams of espresso. You know that you need a coarser grind because that will allow for the water to go through faster and therefore give you a larger volume of a shot. And then with those parameters, it's also helpful because you don't have to drink every shot that you have to taste it and make sure it's good. Because honestly, you're gonna get a tummy ache. You don't want that. So next slide, please. And also make sure your tamp is level. What is a tamp? The tamp is the process when you get the coffee out of the grinder and you weight it, and then you go and you use the thing, you press it down in order to put it in the machine. That's called tamping. This is something I see so many people, baristas, bartenders, every single person who makes coffee does not pay attention to this step. And the step is like the Achilles heel in appropriately dialing in, because you have so much pressure of water coming in from the top that if you're doing it off just a little bit, it'll do a thing called channeling, where all of the water will just kind of sneak in the side door rather than going through all of the beautiful espresso. So yeah, making sure it's level. I like to do it with my fingers. So I set everything down and then I kind of touch around the edges. It's really just kind of a number one thing. I mean, and it's kind of the same with like repeatable movements, consistent movements. Like this is one of them. And it's one that's really easy to stop paying attention to because it's kind of tedious. So next step, please. Espresso troubleshooting. Again, kind of discussed this earlier. Espresso is coming out of the machine too fast. You might want to tighten the grind. You might want to add more espresso to the portafilter. Anytime you're adjusting variables, just adjust them one at a time. Know sometimes you're going to have to purge a little bit for that adjustment to set. Same thing, coffee is coming out too slow. Loosen the grind, add less espresso. Purge between steps. And again, make sure you're changing one variable at a time as often as possible. Next step, please. Mind your coffee intake. We just said that earlier, but oh my gosh, like you think, oh, it's fine. Sometimes it's just better to drink coffee when you want to drink coffee. But when you're doing R&D, it's hard to pay attention to how much you've had, especially with coffee cocktails. You can get really like loopy real fast if you're not paying attention during R&D. Next slide, please. And my last slide. Apologies, I have gone a little longer than expected, but I felt like, the content warranted it. Remember, coffee introduces a lot of water into a cocktail. So chilling your other ingredients potentially before mixing over ice can also mitigate dilution and strength. Coffee is the seed of a fruit. Coffee tastes weirdly good with a lot of fruits. You wouldn't expect it. Like the Carajillo is proof of that, being orange. Like, go wild, like see what you can find. And then experimenting with different coffees will always like help you find something you love. So great. And that's it from me. If you have any questions.
I'm looking over here and I don't see any.
Great.
But Amanda, this has been so informative. What coffee would you use for a Purple Rain cocktail?
The Purple Rain is absolutely a Ethiopian natural processed coffee. That is 100% the best coffee to use for that.
Nice.
All right.
I think and this has been amazing. And the amount of coffee knowledge that you've given here today, I think is going to come in handy during the competition, because the new component that has been added this year as a judging criteria is your coffee knowledge, which you can get a max of 10 points. So I think there is some great opportunity for people to rewatch this session and hear all that you've said about coffee. There is so much to take in, and it has been amazing. Thank you.
And absolutely, I'm always open if people want to reach out to me on Instagram or find me on Facebook if you have any coffee questions, because I know that there's stuff I didn't cover here, stuff that maybe I could have expanded upon if time allowed, and I'm like always happy to talk about it. So thank you so much. It's been really fun.
And before we move on over to Anna Rose, I do have one more question for you. What is your ultimate coffee cocktail that you like to enjoy?
Ooh, so I really do genuinely like the Carajillo. I think it's lovely. I also, just because we spent a year at home, I like dream about having a frozen Irish coffee from Aaron Rose. Like I could,
nice.
Like I would walk there right now from New York if I could.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you. I guess
All right, thank you.
we'll move on over. Now that we've gained our coffee knowledge, bring in Anna Rose Crone to. Hey, Anna Rose, how we doing?
Doing good. That was so informative and interesting. I absolutely loved it. Thank you, Amanda.
Yes, so much knowledge gained there. But as we kind of come to an end here, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about what it was like competing in the local round of a competition that was all digital. What was that experience like for you with Bartenders and Baristas?
Well, it was definitely interesting because I never really been much of like a tech person. Um, so I did a lot of learning there, which was it was fun to get creative in that way, but as well as getting creative in your drinks and with all the time that we had, it was definitely it filled some of that time in, making me a little happier during that year. So it was really fun and cool, and it was different than being in person. Like, as much as I want to meet everyone, it's coming soon. We'll all meet up soon, but it was fun to explore different ways to be creative on presenting your cocktail, not just making your cocktail.
And now for you, getting to do cocktail competitions in person versus getting to do them digitally. I know that we discussed prior what it was like not getting to meet people. Do you feel like you were still able to establish connections and like meet people and kind of through this social media universe kind
Oh
of
yeah, for
extend your
sure.
network?
I feel like we all kind of had to jump on a bunch of Zooms in this past year, and I've never been on a Zoom before this past year. So like meeting people online through Instagram, especially, definitely reached out to a lot of my competitors, and I'm closer to people that I hadn't met. And so now I've met a few in real life, and it's just cool to like also feel like you know someone before even meeting them, with this the technology that we have and the ways of that we're communicating now.
And then if you were to have any advice for anybody that's going to enter, what would it be about their cocktail and choices they should make to stand out or to help them win?
Oh, well, my first advice is definitely follow the rules. Follow all
Yes.
those rules. It's not that long to read through them all. Bullet point them so that you can remember them. But also simplicity is key. I know that there's a lot of secret ingredients in Liqueur 43, but you have those five that they mentioned that you can work off of. Definitely mention those five, what you want to complement out of those five, and keep it simple. Everyone should be able to make it at their bar around the world. So don't use too crazy of an ingredient. Try to make it accessible, because you want to be like a carajillo. Every bar with an espresso machine in Liqueur 43 can make a carajillo. And you want your cocktail to be the next carajillo. So make it easy but creative, and complement those flavors in Liqueur 43.
I think you nailed that right on the nose. That's pretty much what I can say personally, as because I'm a part of the selection committee. Simplicity is key. We are essentially looking for a new classic cocktail, the next Carajillo, the next espresso martini, and it's to be served all over the world because Liqueur 43 is available in 60 markets worldwide. And now here's a question for you, because you like obviously there was a lot of PR. You've gotten to do like a lot of cocktail videos. You kind of became our spokesperson this year. We had you do a lot of stuff during the pandemic in this digital realm. What was it like being in a magazine that the cover had Mary J. Blige on?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was so exciting, especially to see that she was on the cover, because I love it. My mom, she was even more excited than me. She's like, say hi to her. And I'm like, Mom, it doesn't work that way. But it was still really cool to get those copies too, and be like, whoa, I'm in a magazine. That's just wild. And I love it.
Awesome. And then lastly, your cocktail, would you mind describing it for everyone? Because it was so delicious. Just like what the specs were, and like the name, and why it stood out.
Well, Deja Brew, I kind of got the idea from like, I've always worked a brunch shift. So you get into those like mundane habits at a brunch shift, and you have those espresso martinis. That's just a classic, but how can you make it different, and how can you make it stand out? So that's kind of where the name came from. And I really wanted some like salted chocolate notes, and I wanted to do something different besides using like vodka. Like everyone uses vodka in an espresso martini. So Scotch has so much flavor in it. And because of the distilleries being surrounded by the ocean, you get that salinity, and that adds that salted note in there. And even just that with the Licor 43 and the espresso is great. But to bump up those citrus notes in the Licor 43, I did add some raspberries in there as well, which I think just it kind of made it more round, and even brought out the chocolate bitter notes too. And that's pretty much it. It's a simple cocktail with simple ingredients that I just wanted to give like a chocolatey, citrus, salted notes, and bring out that Licor 43 flavor profile. The ones that I knew, at least the ingredients in there.
And now here's another question for you, because you are going to be judging the local round this year. Do you have any advice or suggestions for people when filming their videos to kind of help them stand out, or how to have clear sound, or to make sure the lighting is right, or what would be your suggestions to competitors?
Well, as you can, if anyone has watched my videos, you see the first one that I had submitted for the local round compared to the one that I had filmed for the globals. They're very, very different. And it doesn't take away either. If you're in your kitchen and all you have is your phone, maybe get a tripod or have a friend hold it, and just keep it simple. Don't try to do too much if you can't, and don't get stressed about it, because the main thing is you talking about your cocktail and your presentation of that cocktail, and getting people to want to finish watching your video so that they want to try your cocktail as well.
That's excellent. I think the idea too is that like you're talking to a friend when you're speaking, and just to like, it's a regular bar shift, and that's how it should be treated as you're talking about your cocktail.
Oh yeah. And there's definitely going to be bloopers. Do not worry. I've had a ton of bloopers myself. You just start over again, take a breath, and keep on going, because you'll get through it and you'll be able to edit it anyway, because it is a video.
Nice. And a little bit of information too. There is a lot more information about Licor 43, the Bartenders and Barista competition, on our Licor 43 USA Instagram. And you can sign up by going to licor43.com. But there's a couple videos. Anna Rose is actually in one where she describes what it was like competing in the local round and then on to the global round. And I wanted to ask you about the global round. What was that like, getting to compete with bartenders from across the world?
Oh my God, that was like, it blew my mind. I didn't even know it would go as far as that. So it was really honoring to get accepted to do that, and to recreate that video and do it more in the style of how I wish it had looked initially. But just wild, and to see all of the creations. And actually I got to make a few this past year for the Licor 43 USA Instagram page. So I got to try some too, which was really fun. And people made some really interesting drinks that tasted great. It's fun trying them all in one day.
100%. And then I know that we do have an upcoming live with you and Berenice Morales, who won the Audience Favorite Award in the global final, coming up next week. Are you excited to kind of?
Oh yes, I'm so excited. I'm excited to like actually, because we haven't had any like Zooms with her, so I haven't really talked to her except for just like Instagram messages. But she's probably the person that I've talked to the most out of all of my competitors for Licor 43. And she's just so sweet. And I can't wait to go to Mexico City and actually meet her though, because she seems like she's going to be a fun person to hang out with.
And that's going to be an Instagram live on Tuesday, June 15th at The time of that, I believe, is in this flyer here. You have to forgive me because I
Mhm.
know it's 1300 Mexico time, which I believe is 11 a.m. our time. Will
I
be when
think
that.
that's the time I have, 11 a.m.
Perfect. All right. And let's see if we have any other questions here in the chat. And then lastly, I have a question for you. Was it, did you know, like, did you have an idea that you were going to win the whole thing when we all were at the Olivetta rooftop? Did you have any
Oh my
idea,
gosh.
or did you think that you would place, or?
I was hoping to get the audience. I literally did not know I was going to win. I was like, okay, it's really early though. How am I going to get all my friends to vote for me for this audience vote winning? But then you guys, like, you can see my video, like the video of my reaction. It's very real. You guys brought out this giant check,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, I've never seen one in
Yeah.
real life, and I was definitely surprised. I did not expect it at all.
Oh, funny. Well, I think that's pretty much all we have. We do have a slide that just kind of goes into more detail about the best of both worlds, which will have yourself and Berenice Morales, and then we'll have our translator, Silvana Zender, out of Los Angeles, to kind of guide you guys through this. And it'll be a really cool experience to hear how both of you made it into the finals and and try each other's cocktails for everybody and give out some more tips. And I guess that will pretty much conclude it. I do really want to give a very special thank you to Amanda and Rose. This was incredible, super informative. And if you've enjoyed this class, please hit like or the love button and show some love in the comments. If you want to see more classes like this one, follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook or YouTube. They have new classes throughout the week. They are awesome. And an archive of our past classes can be found at facebook.com/pdxcw. And we'll be posting these videos on YouTube for the folks that aren't on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at PDXCW. And I believe, Anna Rose, you're going to be going on a little talk back with Michael to talk about what it was like being on this live educational.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will be on there.
Amazing. Well, thank you, everyone. This was incredible. And yes, remember to sign up, register at licor43.com. And you have until June 24th at midnight to submit your video. Another hot tip would be to go and follow at Licor43USA. I will be sharing the 3 best videos from last year on my personal page as well at Mike Nardelli 43. So if you want to check out those videos, they're great representations of ways in which you can create an awesome video. We are just so excited. And remember to hashtag at Licor43BB2021. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.